speaking of the new album, and also like I notice with your band, I don't do this with any other bands, but every time a new Cannibal Corpse album is released, I immediately go to the track list and I want to read the titles of the songs. It's just like a tradition of mine. And I remember like a handful of albums ago, there was I remember just reading Skewered from Ear to Eye, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait till I get to that one. And this one on Chaos Horrific, I think the one that stood out for me was Pitchfork Impalement. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't wait till I get to that one. And yeah.
That's kind of always been a thing for us, is to try and, make titles that immediately get your interest,
Mhm.
and we've had some that, you know, have an element of that kind of black humor to them or whatever, that kind of, like Shredded Humans or Scattered Remains, Splattered Brains from the first album. So it's something we've done right along, really. I mean, not that they were intended to be humorous or something, but it just, sometimes when something's so brutal, it's kind of like, yeah, Pitchfork Impalement. Well, there's nothing funny about that actually happening, but it's just so brutal to see it written there as a song title. It's like, how else do you react to it? But, kind of
Yeah.
be like, wow, that's insane,
Yeah. And I always like love like just kind of like seeing like reactions or even like YouTube comments on the latest video, Summon for Sacrifice, which it's brutal video, but I find like there's always like the mix of people being scared of it or getting it and being like, this is fun type of energy, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, we don't go for intentional humor or anything like that. But
Yeah.
if when you're going really brutal with certain things, it's going to be kind of a natural reaction. And I find that the really gory stuff, like, yeah, Pitchfork Impalement, that's an easy one to kind of use as an example for this album. Um, you look at other things that are more subtle and they end up being a little scarier from a horror
Yeah.
standpoint,
Yeah.
because it's not so over the top. So
Mhm.
sometimes the more subtle horror is actually more effective horror. And we definitely, we kind of run the gamut when it comes to horror. We've got a whole bunch of albums and we don't want to have everything be exactly the same style. So I've used this analogy a bunch of times, but we have songs that are more like The Shining or The Exorcist, and then we have songs that are more like, Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 or whatever, like,
Mhm.
we got a full range of different types of horror that we cover in our song lyrics, similar to way there's a lot of different types of horror movies, and some of them are scarier than others. And usually the really gory ones are actually, they're often less scary than some of the more subtle ones.
Yeah, that's so true. I love the movie analogy too, because like films, like your music, like when you're listening to a Cannibal Corpse song for the first time, it takes you on a bit of a journey and everything as well. If you're like following along with whether with the lyrics or just the vibe of the tune too, it's just great stuff. And
Thank you.
yeah,